Welcome back to Arise Review. An historic transition of power is about to take place in Africa's largest democracy. By this time next week, Muhammadu Buhari will be president. Festivities building up to Friday's inauguration are already underway. The general's victory and his party's performance in state elections is being hailed as a victory for the country's democratic process. Well, he faces serious challenges, however. Boko Haram seems to be weakening under pressure from a regional military force, but the need to eliminate the terror group completely is underscored by revelations of atrocities committed against captive women and girls. And this day reports there could be friction developing between the outgoing and incoming administrations. There are calls for an investigation of Goodluck Jonathan's handling of finances. Well, Sara Firth is live in Abuja. Tell us more about this investigation, Sara.
Well, I think it's not surprising that you've got these types of tensions emerging in the lead up to that inauguration ceremony that's going to take place here in Abuja on May the 29th. And of course, a lot of scrutiny of the situation that Nigeria now currently finds itself in economically, and really by all accounts, a pretty low point for the country, and of course a large part of that blame being rested squarely on the outgoing president, Goodluck Jonathan's shoulders. Now you've got Muhammadu Buhari, the president-elect, getting ready to take the reins of power, and I think there's going to be a lot of focus on what happens next after you see him officially sworn in, whether or not any of these investigations are in fact pursued. But I think certainly there's going to be a bit of nervousness amongst many of the former administration, given that these calls for an investigation are really ramping up right now.
Sara, there may have been some concerns, but as you know, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry will be attending the ceremonies. What does this, in your opinion, say about America's commitment to Nigeria?
Well, that news, the announcement that it would be U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry heading up that U.S. delegation at the inauguration, really went down incredibly well here in Nigeria. It's very much seen as a nod of respect to the new administration. And you actually had the president-elect in Britain this week, yesterday, meeting with the British Prime Minister David Cameron. So look, this is incredibly important for Muhammadu Buhari, that he's able to build not just on the domestic support that he's enjoying here in Nigeria at the moment, but also showing Nigerians that he does have the ear, he does have the backing of the international community as well.
Sara, you know, this is something that many people are concerned about here, at least scratching their heads, including yours truly here. Reports of fuel scarcity for an oil-producing country. That seems kind of strange.
Well, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, does it, that you've got one of the oil-richest nations in the entire world with queues in the capital, in Lagos, for fuel. It's a fuel scarcity which hasn't been uncommon over the past few years, but this one in particular causing a real headache for Nigerians. Here in Abuja, in the capital, you've got massive queues, very difficult to get fuel, and that has sent black market prices through the roof, in a very similar situation in Lagos too. And actually that's having a knock-on impact. It's not just people not being able to run their cars. This is now affecting potentially the mobile phone networks, potentially some of the radio stations also announcing they might have to close early. So you're in this handover period at the moment, that sort of calm before the storm, if you like, but everyone very, very keen to see this fuel scarcity brought to an end.
Sara, I want to focus on the northeastern section of Nigeria. We, of course, here at Arise News have put a lot of focus on that, and, of course, Boko Haram here. And I guess this comes as no surprise that a recent report that terrorist group uses rape to terrorize. Tell us about that.
Well, just really shocking reports you've had over the last few weeks. The Nigerian military have managed to release a fair number of women and children from some of the areas that they'd been held hostage by Boko Haram. And that's part of the ongoing pushback efforts. And so gradually we're getting some details emerging about what exactly those hostages faced, the ordeals that they went through, and just very graphic descriptions, sadly, about the fact fact that Boko Haram, it seems, using the systematic sexual violence against hostages during their time in captivity. One commentator describing this as perhaps a Boko Haram strategy to start a new generation of jihadists. It's going to be extremely concerning, and I think the most worrying thing right now is that there really is a big question mark over what support these women, these children, the people who've been suffering at the hands of Boko Haram, what support is really there for them at the moment. And that actually at this point remains extremely unclear, but of course a huge amount of psychological support will be needed.
Right, of course, the reports of some of the escaped schoolgirls, at least a few of those came back pregnant. That's just horrible here. We'll keep our eyes on that. Another story, though, that has kind of been on the back burner recently here is Ebola. Perhaps a lot of people thought that disease was licked, but apparently new cases of Ebola are being reported in West Africa. I would assume this is a major setback.
Well, it's very difficult, and it's part of the long-running struggle, and this is what doctors that we speak to in the region are very keen to emphasize. Yes, there's been some good news. Take Liberia, and they recently were declared Ebola-free by the World Health Organization. That's a major step forward, but at the same time, what doctors are warning is that this is an ongoing challenge, and you still, in the region, you take a look at Guinea, you take a look at Sierra Leone, and new cases being reported there all the time. So certainly the region is not out of the woods yet as far as the Ebola virus is concerned, and very much I think doctors keeping the pressure on to try and tackle the virus.
And of course, real quickly, another disease rampaging up there is cholera right now, Sarah.
Very, very disturbing news, and you've actually got the UN saying that in Tanzania they're dealing with a new outbreak. Cholera has been around for a fair few months now, and it's something that, again, regionally Africa is dealing with right now. But what you've got in Tanzania at the moment is tens of thousands of refugees that have fled the threat of violence in Burundi. You've got those anti-third term protesters and the whole confusion around the election period there. And what that's meant is that in Tanzania you've got those conditions, those cramped, unsanitary conditions, which is where cholera flourishes. So the UN really struggling right now to tackle what has been a very worrying outbreak.
I tell you, those images are certainly daunting. Sara Firth reporting live from Abuja. Sarah, thank you.